Welcome to today's podcast. I'm your host, David F. Haas. You're listening to the David F. Haas podcast, so humbly named the David F. Haas podcast. But in this podcast, essentially what it's dedicated to is helping people move up the scale of consciousness. If you don't know what the scale of consciousness is, you'll have to go back through some older podcasts where I explain that. But ultimately, it's increasing our vibration. It's increasing our level of awareness. It's tuning into what programs we have bought into and learning how to become free of them so that we can get connected to the infinite potential that exists all around us. It's already within us. It just has to be revealed. Dr. Hawkins, who is a teacher that I've studied a lot of his work, he's probably the closest thing that we had to an enlightened being on this earth in the last couple hundred years. And because of that, his teachings are very powerful. He wrote several books. I've read them all multiple times. And one of the ways he describes this internal power is it's like the sun shining down on the earth. The sun's always there, but sometimes there's clouds that cover that light. Those clouds are the patterns, the programs, the belief systems, the thoughts that are blocking that light, that are blocking that potential to make the world green, to kill this analogy. So the goal of spiritual growth, or moving up the scale of consciousness, increasing our vibration, is to remove those clouds so the light can shine through. The light that's already within us can shine through. Speaking metaphorically here. So every single day, there's an opportunity to try and clear some of these clouds. It's all around us at all times. And in today's podcast, one of the clouds that I want to talk about clearing, which has been one of the toughest ones for me, is the cloud of desire, the state of lack. And we're going to talk about that with regards to everything that's been going on in the stock market recently with GameStop, AMC. So essentially, if you don't know what happened, there's a group of people on Reddit that got together and basically learned through probably extensive stock knowledge, extensive stock research, I should say, that the stock GameStop, which is a store that sells computer games and video games, was shorted heavily by big hedge funds. And what that means is they're basically banking on those stocks failing. And if they do fail, they're going to make a bunch of money. So these group of investors got word of this and basically said they're going to figure out a way to stick it to the man. They created an online group and they bought the stock like crazy, which made it do the reverse of falling. It increased. The stock had like one of the biggest increases, single day increases in the history of the stock market. And it was all because of the power of this group. So all of these huge hedge funds lost a bunch of money. They were super bent about it. And a bunch of people got really, really rich. If they were able to get in and get out at the right time. So what this created was an awareness of the opportunities that exist in the stock market to make money. And the stock market is a great place to put your money, but there is restrictions and limitations that we want to be aware of. And if you found yourself in this place saying, oh man, imagine if I would have bought GameStop at $10 and then sold it at $300, how much money I would have had, right? Oh, I feel like I'm missing out on the opportunity to make a bunch of money in the stock market. I better get in. I better be able to be ready to jump on the next opportunity. And ultimately, when we're in this mentality, we are in the state of lack. We feel that we need to gain or get more, and the ego its primary focus is getting. Its primary focus is proving ourselves right, is proving itself right. And it always needs more to feel fulfilled. The goal of spiritual growth is to not require anything to feel fulfilled. There is nothing that we need to add out there in order to feel fulfilled, because we have resolved all of the issues. We've removed all of the clouds and the light is constantly shining through. But as I said, every single day, there's an opportunity for us to look within. So I found myself getting caught up in this. And I played the stock market game years and years ago when I was in the getting game, getting more, constantly seeking. Desire is insatiable. You cannot satisfy it. and it is relentless. So even if, let me give you my own example. So when I was in $350,000 in debt and my car was getting repossessed, I was missing mortgage payments, creditors were calling me all the time. I was in this constant state of getting. And when I finally made the transformation and came to the realization of why I wanted to get, and I got to the root of it, I began coming out of there. And I said to myself, as soon as I get out of debt, I'm going to be the happiest person on earth. I got out of debt, and I said, as soon as I have 10,000, I'm going to be the happiest person on earth. I had 10,000. As soon as I have 100,000, I had 100. It just kept on going until I finally said, whoa, what's going on here, right? And that is an example of how desire is insatiable. No matter what happens, no matter how much you get, you are never satisfied. So ultimately, or fulfilled. So ultimately, what we want to do is remove what clouds are blocking this internal light, so we don't feel like we need to go out there and get anymore. And I know the resistance to letting go of getting, because I've felt it immensely, throughout my entire life, is because we feel if we let go of getting, nothing is going to come into our lives anymore. But it's actually the exact opposite. Our desire is what is blocking the flow of abundance to come into our lives. And this is really easy to understand in a simple example. It's like what you hold in mind tends to manifest. Meaning if you're constantly in the state of lack, thinking you don't have enough, you will never have enough. Okay. And this is why you see billionaires that still work, 15-hour days, because even though they're billionaires, they think they don't have enough and they're going to need to keep on working. But if you feel like you already have enough and you're already completely fulfilled with who you are, then guess what? More and more will continue to flow into your life. Okay. So it's like when the boy likes the girl. I've used this example a million times. He chases her, he buys her flowers, he does all of these things, and she wants nothing to do with him. The second he finally gives up on her, he truly, fully gives up on her. He doesn't half kind of like, oh, I'm just going to ignore her and maybe she'll come running. And when he finally says, forget it, and he starts looking at other girls and starts, dating, that's when she comes running back, right? Because he's finally removed that resistance that was keeping her from coming to him. Okay. And the same thing that we want to do with getting more money. We want to get rid of the getting aspect of this money. So when we find ourselves feeling the FOMO or feeling like we missed out on an opportunity in the stock market, that is an indication for us that we're still in the state of lack. We still don't feel like we have enough. And once you believe it, you can achieve it. So in order to begin feeling like you have enough, we need to start breaking down those barriers and understanding why you feel like you don't. Simple enough. So on an aside, my stock market strategy is twofold. One is I invest in index funds. I've talked about this in multiple podcasts, but there came a point when I was playing the stock market game and I was buying and selling stocks that it was consuming my life. It was taking up 3 or 4 hours of my day. And because I've learned to get out of the getting game, I quickly came to this realization, do I want to make my life about just making more money? And the answer was immediate. It was no, because that's what my life was going to be about. And could I have made a bunch of money in the stock market? Probably, if I fully dedicated myself to it. And you see this all the time. There's a bunch of people that are making millions of dollars on Wall Street, but that's all that they do, right? And when we see someone all of a sudden buying GameStop and making $22 million or whatever that one guy made, we were like, oh my God, that could have been us. But it's like, well, yeah, it could have if you would have dedicated 10 years to doing stock research and understanding how shorts work and all of this stuff and be completely and fully immersed in it. Yeah, you could have made $22 million, right? So it's like when I first started coaching, it was like, I didn't expect to come into coaching and all of a sudden start making $10 million a year. This is a process of learning how to continuously improve upon what it is that I'm offering, right? So that I can affect more people. And the same thing works in the stock market. The same thing works in literally any business or anything that you want to do. It's like just focus on being the best that you can possibly be every single day and continuous movement. So this is something I've been big on lately. It's something that my mentor, Andrew Facca teaches, is that how important movement is. So in the physical world, movement is hugely important. If you don't move, you'll end up, seizing up. You'll end up not being able to get off the couch or get out of bed. So physical movement is super important. And you can see this in North America. Like one of the biggest limitations to our movement in North America is the toilet, right? We never go past 90 degrees. We're always sitting, right? But in other countries where they don't have the toilet and they're still squatting over holes, they're way more flexible, right? And it was the introduction of the toilet that stopped people from completely bending down, right? So I know people that are not even in their 60s yet and can barely bend down and tie their shoes, right? So when we stop moving, that we get stagnant, we get stuck, right? So while we can see that in the physical world, really simply, that if you don't keep moving, you're going to seize up. But that same principle applies into the emotional world, into the mental world, and into the spiritual world. And that's the aim of this podcast. That's the aim of all of my coaching, the aim of my online course that's being released soon, is to keep people in the field of movement, right? In these other areas that are critical, right? We see the criticalness of moving physically, but it's even more critical to continue to move spiritually, to move up that scale of consciousness. So then when we get this gift, like this GameStop, and it triggers something inside of us saying, oh, I missed out on this opportunity, we can check in and saying, well, what's going on here? Oh, I'm still in the getting game. Why do I still feel like I don't have enough? Why am I not fulfilled fully? And we start asking that question, we can begin to get to the roots of why we're not feeling fully fulfilled. And when we become free of that, we get out of getting. And when we get out of getting, that's when the abundance begins to flow into our lives. Okay. And that's ultimately the power of spiritual growth, is that everything that you think is going to make you happy, you need to let go of first. And once you let go of it, then it'll flow into your life. And it's a really hard concept to grasp. And that's why you can see the importance of belonging to spiritual groups, to getting coaching, to taking online courses, to having some sort of devotional practice, reading spiritual books, doing a Course in Miracles, because we want to keep moving. So let me circle back to my investment strategy. So like I said, I played the game, and I began to realize it was consuming my life. It was taking hours and hours and hours, and I was doing okay. Like, I think, I had some nice wins, but ultimately, it was way too emotional. Like, I was riding the highs, and I just felt like I could never win. So I'll give you an example of never winning in the stock market. So recently, about 8 months ago, I bought Tesla. I put $10,000 into Tesla because I've been watching Tesla for a long time, when I was into the stock market, and I was like, oh, this is a great company. And so I started to see some movement there, and I'm like, on a whim, without doing any research whatsoever, I'm like, I'll put this $10,000 into Tesla. So really quickly, in a matter of like a month, I made 30% back. So I made $3,000 US, which is like 4,500 Canadian. So I'm like, oh, wow, that was awesome. Then Tesla proceeded to go up 700%, and then the stock split 7 times, and has continued to go up. So I probably lost out on $100,000 by not holding on to that stock. So even though I won $4,500 for doing absolutely nothing, I still feel like I lost. And this was the dilemma that I was constantly facing, was this emotional roller coaster of shoulda, coulda, woulda. Oh, if I would have only bought then, if I would have only sold then. And it was relentless, and it was taxing. And I'm like, this is not what I want to be a part of. I don't need to add any more money into my life, right? I just want a nice, simple return, and not have all of the time, not allow this thing to consume my time, consume my life, create more stress in my life. So then I switched my strategy to a real simple index fund strategy, where I just invest every single month a certain amount of money. And then the only thing I change is I put more money in if the stock market dips. So when the stock market dipped, when the coronavirus came around, I dumped a bunch of extra money in, and it turned out to be a great investment, because I made a bunch of extra cash, because as you know, the stock market's back up to new record highs now. So it's really that simple. There's no emotion whatsoever. I just constantly am in the stock market, buying on a monthly basis. When it dips considerably, I buy more. It's literally it. It's always bet on America. So Warren Buffett has this great quote, and he's interviewing with someone, and they say to Warren Buffett, hey, Warren, you've been so successful in the stock market. How come more people don't follow your strategy? And he says, because nobody wants to get rich slowly, right? And it's just a real simple concept, but that's ultimately what we're looking for. We're looking for that quick fix. It's a recognition of the lack of patience that's inside of us. And the most patient people I know in my life have been the people that have been the most successful. The people that are just slow, steady, consistent. Those are the people that end up being the most successful. It's the people that are constantly chasing the next big idea or the next whatever, that they're never They're never actually doing anything. They're never fully committing to an idea because they don't have the patience. They put in, let's say a year of effort, and they say, oh, this idea is not working, and they flop to the next. And I'm still guilty of this in my own life because of that lack of patience, because of that strong desire to make people realize that I did it. I wasn't the stupid kid anymore. And these are some of the mechanisms that my ego created to protect me from feeling small, right? So now that I've become aware of them, I can do the work to become free of that feeling of being small. And then my desire for money won't be as large as it once was, and it won't have control over me like it once did. But I'm still working on it, because as I noticed with this GameStop thing, I was like, oh, geez, maybe I should be paying more attention to the stock market. And I did. I got wrapped up and I said, whoa, what's going on here? And then I came to the realization, it's like, oh, because I'm allowing myself to be in the state of lack. I have fear of missing out. Let me tune into what's going on there, tune back in, let go of the emotions that are tied to not having enough, not being smart enough, felt them fully, let them go, got back on track, and focus on part two, which for me, part two, with regards to making more money, has just been focused on earning, right? It's just like anytime I had any financial issues in my life, I just focused on making more money. So it's like if I wanted to buy a bigger house, it's like, okay, well, how much more money do I need to make a month to do that? And just focus on how much money I can continuously earn, how I can continuously improve, and letting go of the outcome. Just coming up with a plan, making sure that it's in the highest good and is serving people in the highest good, and then executing on it and staying with it until you have success. Right. And so that's what I've done here with my coaching system. I started off really small, just with a few one-on-one clients. It quickly grew to having multiple one-on-one clients. Now it's growing into group coaching, and eventually it's going to go into online courses. But guess what? I've been doing it for almost 2 years now. This stuff doesn't happen overnight. Right. So having the patience to stick with something, realizing that everything that I have right here is enough, and I'm okay either way, whether this thing takes off and becomes $1 billion business, or whether it stays exactly where it is, I'm okay with it because I've let go of the outcome. But that doesn't mean I stop doing things. That doesn't mean I'm not even saying pursuing, but I'm still moving forward. I'm still evolving my business, but there is no desire anymore. There is no wanting. And I've really been tuning into the patience. Is this just being patient, just trusting the process, trusting that everything that needs to be revealed to me will be revealed to me. And I was able to do that by getting out of the state of desire. So if you want to be in the stock market, then be in the stock market. This was like a great piece of advice that I got from Andrew again when I was, I was operating Treehouse and it was running really successfully. I had some extra cash, and then I started buying apartment buildings, right? And then I found myself with one foot in both worlds, right? I was this landlord who was at the beck and call of all these tenants, and I was trying to operate and run a bar. And because of that, my time and energy was split between these two worlds, right? And, you have to have a diversified portfolio, all these things. But, I've actually found that that for me, that school of thinking hasn't been great, And Andrew said, if you want to be a landlord, be a landlord. If you want to be a restaurateur, be a restaurateur. And that piece of advice really stuck with me, right? And it wasn't until I sold all those apartments, I sold all my other interest in other businesses, closed some businesses, and I got fully focused on that one business that everything completely turned around for me, right? And even though I sold those apartments at the complete wrong time, because the real estate market here in Windsor went through the roof, and I probably lost hundreds of thousands of dollars by not selling them at the right time, it was the greatest decision I ever made, because it got me out of that landlord game, right? And allowed me to fully focus on Treehouse, which now has a bigger value to it, because I've been able to steadily increase the income because of that fixed focus. So if you want to be a stock trader, then be a stock trader. That's literally all it comes down to, right? So and obviously you can't just quit your job and become a stock trader, but that's all you do as your side hustle. Like at night, you're researching stocks, and that's all you do, right? And then eventually you'll be able to turn that into your full-time and attention, and you can quit your day job, or you can change businesses. But if you're in business and you're trying to play the stock market, you have to ask yourself, well, what is it that you want to do? Do you want to be a stock trader, or do you want to run your current business? And just answer that question. And then once you answer that question, then focus fully on that one thing, especially if you're in business. It's a lot easier for someone that has a job to have a side hustle, right? Because it's easier to separate the two. But when you're in business, as you know, it's very hard to separate these two things, right? So the two end up crossing paths and merging, and it just becomes a nightmare, right? So if you went into business because there was passion in, let's say, the restaurant industry, there was passion in trading stocks, or there's passion in coaching like there is for me, then just stay focused on that. And if you keep that focus, you're going to end up growing 10 times faster than if your focus is spread out. It's like literally that simple. And then the final thought I think I'll just leave you with is this: every day we're presented with opportunities to look within, but very few of us are ever actually taking the time to do so. So if we are feeling like we missed out on an opportunity to make more money, then what we need to look within and say, well, why don't we feel like we have enough now, right? And start getting to the roots of those. For me, I've explained this several times, but I always, the need to make more money for me was tied to the shame that I experienced growing up as a kid by not having enough, by living in a house that wasn't super nice, by driving shitty cars, by not having nice clothes. And the mechanism that my ego created to protect me from feeling the pain of that shame was to go out and make a bunch of money, right? And for the better part of my life, probably until I was 30, I was only focused on making money. That's all I cared about. So I could get pulled in multiple directions. If there was a money-making opportunity over here, I'd get pulled in that direction, another money. And so then I ended up spreading out my focus too wide, and I never ended up making any money. It wasn't until I began to let go of that desire and get fully focused on one thing that I was able to be super successful. And now I feel, because I'm not tied to the outcome, because I don't need to prove to anyone that I'm successful, including myself, I can really be successful in anything that I really set my mind to, right? So for me, it's all based on coaching right now, and that's all I really want to be doing is coaching and helping other people. I eventually see myself leading bigger groups, leading weekly healing sessions that go out to the masses, kind of in some ways. I don't want to say the word church because then people think it's culty, but something along those lines, of having some sort of, worship day where we actually do this work. We don't just go in and read about it. We just don't go and hear about the stories. We actually experience the transformation firsthand. And that is really the only place that you can teach from, is from experience. And, a lot of coaches and stuff take a lot of slack from people that have spent their time going out and getting degrees. But ultimately, most coaches are teaching from a place of experience. And I would rather any day of my life take advice from someone who has been there and done that and figured out how to come out on the other end of it than someone that read about it and is just trying to explain it to it from the experiences of somebody else. And so that's ultimately what I do as a coach for my clients, is I only teach from what I know and from what I've experienced and how I've transformed on my own, right? And so that's where my passion is to help people see and experience what I've been able to experience in my life. And so that's basically it. So I guess the theme of the podcast is that every day there's an opportunity to let go of something. The question being is, what are we doing to actually let go of it? So you can just start questioning how to become free of these things. And then you can start removing those clouds so that the light that already exists within you can shine forth. I'll leave it at that. So thanks for taking the time to listen. If you're interested in any of my coaching programs, right now I think on my website all I have is the one-on-one, but I have some really, really, really cool stuff coming really soon. So stay tuned for that, and we'll see you again next Wednesday.